Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing an in-car video review for Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods, which I just got out of seeing on this very rainy, cloudy, windy day here in southern Tennessee. And my first initial thoughts about it coming out of the theater are, it was fine. It was okay. It's definitely not as good as the first film. So if you, like me, were a very big fan of the first film, you might like certain aspects of this. The dynamic between all of the kids, I thought worked very well. The family dynamic, it's again something that's very much on display in this movie too. And then you have, of course, the added on characters now with the daughters of Atlas being suggested here. And you have Helen Mirren being at the charge of that. You also have Lucy Liu in that. And then also, I'm forgetting her name at the moment. I think it's Rachel Zegler as well. And basically, that dynamic is also kind of interesting because they have their own family dynamic. And so there's two of the different families basically fighting each other. And yeah, ultimately, I would say that the biggest strength that this film has still, just like the first one had, is that it has that heart, it has that lightheartedness that a lot of the DCEU films just don't tend to have, right? It's not like the Marvel Cinematic Universe where everything is a joke and everything is supposed to be like funny and jokey, though there are definitely moments that exist like that in this movie. But I just think the general feel of it is just still unique enough to not be an MCU movie, but also at the same time, not dark enough to be a part of anything that was, previous in the DCEU as far as just general, tone and feel of it. And that's what I liked about the first Shazam film, is that it was different, but it was also, different than the typical Marvel fare, but then also not nearly as just dark and droning on and on and on as a lot of the Zack Snyder movies. That all being said, this movie is also, again, as far as the positives go, that really is pretty much where it ends. I mean, again, the score is fantastic. Very, very powerful, and you have these great, actors in the film, and I think the actors are doing a great job on screen, but unfortunately the story is just mediocre at best. It's not a terrible story, it's not the worst film that you've ever seen, but it's also not a film that's very rewatchable. There's a lot of story elements that exist in the film that you'll, again, appreciate maybe that first time watching it, but if you were ever to go back to a lot of the things that they've mentioned and a lot of the story elements in a second viewing, I just don't think they would hold up as much. I don't think they would have as much emotional weight to them. Again, especially the certain relationships that are building throughout the film, not just between all of the kids, but then also between Billy Batson and his foster mom. There's a really beautiful moment that happens there. But again, it's beautiful in the moment. I don't know necessarily if it would be beautiful in another viewing. Also, I do want to get this out of the way pretty early on. This really isn't too much of a spoiler, but because again, she was featured in the trailer, but I want to make it very, very clear that this is something that I pretty much called was going to happen. And I know that there was some disagreement over this with my Salty Nerd morning podcast brothers. Much love to the Salty Nerd podcast about the role of, and I guess slight spoiler warning here, about the role of Wonder Woman in the film. I said I would not be surprised if it's a very end credit like sequence, and it's true. It's not in the end credits. It is in the actual movie. But literally, it's at the very end of the movie, and she's on screen for just about 2 minutes. And so, even though one would think, oh, she would be very much more so a part of this because of the pantheon of the gods and everything like that. No, in reality, she just shows up and is basically like almost like a Deus Ex Machina type personality, where there's this very strong emotional weight. There's a strong moment that happens that would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to go into it. But then even then, there's not a lot of emotional weight to it because it pretty much ends, and then she shows up, and then it's just like, oh, everything's fine again, and it's like, oh, okay. So really, there's no weight to this whatsoever. The film is also a bit too long. It's probably a good 30 minutes too long. They could have cut about 30 minutes of this film and made it a much better pacing. There are a couple of moments in the film as well where they are having not necessarily like agenda items in there, but there is a very, very, very minor, really it's only like 2 lines in the movie, subplot about one of the kids being gay. And again, it's just something though where it's in there and you think to yourself, okay, this doesn't need to be in there. There's no reason for this. None of us care about the sexuality of any of these kids one way or the other. Why are you making that a thing? And this is again one of the big parts, one of the big problems of the modern Hollywood Hollywood structure, is that they so much obsessed over things like that. But overall, in comparison to the first film, where the first film was a lot of fun and I thought very well made, this film falls behind a little bit. The story, again, not nearly as good as the first one, I thought. And also, I think that there were a lot of problems with the CGI, with the visual effects. It just, yeah, the visual effects were not good, to put it very politely. There's moments in the beginning before you start to get into all of the monsters and the dragon and everything where things look okay. But then once you start to get all these different CGI creatures on screen, it falls apart very, very quickly. And so I think this is a movie that I think some people would enjoy if you were able to see it at a matinee price, maybe even waiting for it to come out on HBO Max. Right now, I even double-checked before going and making this video. It doesn't look like that the early preview numbers for the film were all that impressive. They're still projecting it to only make $35 to $40 million in the domestic market for its opening weekend, which would be very, very small, about $20 million less compared to that of the first Shazam film. And so, again, I'll be breaking that down further this weekend, but I just thought it was interesting nonetheless. So if I had to give this film a grade, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a C+. As I said, it does still have that sense of heart to it, but because Zachary Levi, of course, is a great actor, and I think that his personality is really well suited for this role. And I say that as someone who is not a comics person, and I want to make that very clear. If anyone's going to say, well, the comics did this, comics did that, I have no frame of reference for that. All I can say is that he still has that heart in it, but then also too, the young kid that plays Billy Batson, he had a lot bigger role to play in the first movie, and he doesn't play nearly as big of a role in this film as many of. It's almost like half and half, where half the time they're in their adult form, whereas the other half of the time they're in their kid form. I felt like it was had a much better balance to it in the first movie, whereas in this one it just didn't seem as well balanced. So Zachary Levi, of course, is the reason why I think a lot of people probably would want to support a movie like this and everything like it. But those are my thoughts about the film. It's fine, but in the age of cinema that we are in, where it costs a pretty penny. In fact, the numbers just did a breakdown of the average ticket price going up. And so for those saying inflation doesn't matter, hey, guess what? The numbers, I don't know if they've been watching my videos or not, but they just readjusted their charting, or at the very least they said they were going to start to readjust their charting. And it's going to be interesting nonetheless to see where those numbers are going forward. But what are y'all's thoughts about this movie? Have you seen Shazam 2? Do you plan on seeing it? If you have, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, slap that fire button. Honestly, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Also smash the rumble button as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed feast of St. Patrick. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon, Subscribe Star, and local members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Chris from the 80s, who you can check out over his YouTube channel by the same name, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange at Reviews, you can check out over at his YouTube channel, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Writer, Miss Martin Muses, and you can check her out at her YouTube channel by the same name also. To my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, you can check out over at his Twitch channel, Matt317, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can find out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me at the Patreon level, Subscribe Star level, and locals level of Keeper the Bifrost and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description to find out more ways that you can support the channel, including ways to get access to a podcast and also ways to get access to giveaways that I do on the channel, and also, of course, to my coveted Chosen of Valhalla level as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.